Good afternoon, and first of all, I want to say this is actually really, really good news, what we've heard. The future is unpredictable, but frankly, if you look at the economic report, it shows that the next 4 years, we're going to have some growth, so not into a recession. So that is really, really good news. Well, that's the first thing I want to say. Secondly, I want to say the Trump tax cuts and the tax cuts we've done the last 2 budget cycles are working. They are spurring growth. That's one of the reasons why we are where we are today. And so the overall message for us is that we funded our priorities. Last budget cycle, we were generous in funding our priorities, education and every other agency. And the savings account is full. That's our budget reserves. This is the first time we've ever reached the ceiling, that we're full. And let me say about that this is bipartisan. That's something that we're all worked on. We know that you never know what the future is. That's why you have budget reserves. But the fact that they're full and that they've reached the ceiling is really good news for Minnesota. So the final thing is it's time to give the rest back. The taxpayers that give us that money want us to do good government, make sure that we're spending wisely, want us to make sure that we have a reserve account in case something goes wrong. But eventually there's money that if you have an excess, you should think about giving that back. So I'm pleased to see we have a healthy budget balance, $1.33 billion heading into this next session. That's way better than 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, 2010, when this same meeting, we were projected to have a $6 billion shortfall. That's a little bit different. So it's good that we can work with the governor on what we do with that. Senate Republican leadership really is the one that pushed forward that middle class tax cut. And just a reminder that that was the first time we've done that, a middle class income tax or any income tax bracket reduction in almost 20 years. That was our highest priority and something that I'm glad the governor agreed to. And then Minnesota should feel really good about the budget reserves that we have, that we have met that and that we're moving forward with that reaching the ceiling. So now what do we do with the surplus? I'm just going to list out some ideas that I think we can do. Our caucus has obviously not met about this yet because frankly, we just got this news and it's more than I thought it was going to be. But it's just some things that we can consider. One of them is we've taken bites out of the Social Security income tax. Minnesota is one of 13 states that taxes Social Security income. One of only 13, the rest don't. And so the last 2 budget cycles, we've exempted some of that, but why not take all of that and be done with that? That would be a real win for Minnesota. I see that smile back there. But anyway, that would be something that we consider. As far as one-time money, one of the things that I think we ought to think about is how about a tab fee holiday or a tab rebate or reduction in tab fees? If you think about what happened with MNLARS over the last number of years, people were really, really frustrated. Well, that would be one way that we could say, hey, we're paying attention. Yes, we work together with the governor to actually take a different path, and MNLARS is on a much better path. But think about how do we reward some of those folks that really were frustrated with how things happen there. And we might be open to things like safe school funding. We did release more money for safe schools. There was a greater need than what we actually provided, but that is an area. Roads and bridges is always an area that, frankly, why not use cash for some of that? That's an area that we think what we can do. But overall, again, it's really, really good news. The fact that we met our budget obligations last year for a 2-year budget, we capped out our reserves, and now we have excess money that we can give back. And with that, I know we have our finance chair, and then the House as well.
Well, good morning. Good afternoon, excuse me. I'm Julie Rosen, the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, and I'm very happy to see that our reserve account is fully funded. And this speaks volumes for our state budget going forward in the future years. I'm glad to hear, though, that Commissioner France and the governor are somewhat cautious and careful, and I think we should be. And to me, when I hear those terms, I believe that we need to take a good look at where we're spending the money. So we're going to have supplemental budgets coming up this February from our agencies, and I'm expecting the commissioners to do a deep dive into their budgets to see where this money is going, how it's spent, and can we deliver the services to the state of Minnesota better than what we've been doing, because we've had some pretty good examples, and DHS is one of them. And I think the last Senate Finance hearing, we saw some other discrepancies coming out of some of the agencies. And that is the area that I really want to look at. And I'm happy to hear that people do not, the leaders do not want to take out the 491, that we can leave it in the budget reserve, keep it healthy. That was a compromise deal last year. We did it just to make sure that we had a solid budget going forward in 23 and 24, but with a 6.6% increase in our growth of the budget this last year, we need to take a good look at where we're spending the money, and that's my charge. And I believe the Senate Republicans are going to be able to really expect more from the agencies, from the commissioners, and I expect the governor to do that too, because and I respect his willingness to be open-minded towards these things. He's very good to work with. We do have a difference of opinion on many areas of where the money is spent, but I think everybody wants to make sure that we're spending the money wisely. Thank you.
All right, we're almost done. Good afternoon. I agree. I think this is actually great news for Minnesota. It shows that we've got a healthy, strong, vibrant economy. Revenues continue to come in over projections. I think those are all really good things. And I think it puts us in a great position. Obviously, this last session, we set a budget. I and the minority wasn't as involved in that as I would have liked to have been, but the majority parties set a budget for this state and invested in the priorities that I think we all can agree on. Now this gives us an opportunity to say, what do we do with this extra money? Because obviously we've got more money coming in than we need. In the last election, the #1 issue was healthcare costs. In the next election, I predict the #1 issue will be healthcare costs. I think the best thing we can do is use this money to directly reduce healthcare costs for every Minnesotan. So I would propose that we use this money, less than $900 million of this we can use to reduce or eliminate the provider tax that was put in place at the demand of Governor Walz this last session. It's no mystery that I was very disappointed that the provider tax was put in place. It's a direct tax increase on all Minnesotans. It's bad policy. We shouldn't be taxing people's health care. It's a regressive policy. It's really just bad public policy. And I think this provides us an opportunity to correct a wrong and show Minnesotans that we listened to them in the last election, show them that we care about reducing their health care costs. I know that it was the #1 issue. I traveled around the state and heard from many Minnesotans that this is the issue they care the most about. It appears that this will be the issue they care about the most in the next election. And I think this would really show Minnesotans that we're listening to them. Let's use the money they've given us and directly put it to reduce their healthcare costs. I think there isn't something better that we could do with the money. So that's my proposal. And I think we've got a real opportunity to really show them that we're listening to them. This session, I think, obviously, traditionally a bonding year. My hope is that we can have conversations a little bit earlier in the session about bonding. The first conversation that I was engaged in bonding in last session was at 5 a.m. when a special session ended at 7 a.m. That sort of end of session hurry and scurry is unacceptable. It's disrespectful to Minnesotans. And there will not be a bonding bill this year if we're making decisions in the final hours with some sort of tribunal. So this is an opportunity for the minority parties to say, we're going to do this right. We also did listen to Minnesotans. We listened to the people at the Capitol this last session that weren't happy with the process. We want to invest in the things that Minnesotans care about in infrastructure, wastewater, drinking water, road and bridge infrastructure. We know those investments are important. We agree with that, but we also believe that we need to go through a transparent process at the Capitol to get there. So we've got a lot of work to do this session. The other thing that I think must be a priority in the next session is we absolutely must restructure DHS in the next session. This is something that cannot, should not, and will not wait. And if we can't get our work done and bring the reform necessary to bring public confidence back to our Department of Human Services, which is the department that provides the most required, necessary, basic services to Minnesotans who need it the most vulnerable Minnesotans, then we shouldn't be here. So that's my charge for everyone in St. Paul. Let's not waste the next few months. Let's actually roll up our sleeves, get to work together to restructure DHS and bring public confidence back to that department. So those are the things that are going to be my priorities going into the next session, and I think we've got a great opportunity to accomplish all of them. Questions?
Leader Daudt, did you hear the governor's reaction to the repeal of the provider tax?
Yeah, I also listened to him in the campaign. I also know that his #1 issue in the campaign was reducing healthcare costs for Minnesotans. So it's very disingenuous for the governor to say that he listened to Minnesotans, that he knew, and he campaigned on lowering healthcare costs. He gets here, he directly raises healthcare costs on Minnesotans, and then he says everything's on the table except I will not reduce healthcare costs for Minnesotans. I don't believe him. I think he's a better guy than that. I think he listens to Minnesotans and he knows that this is the #1 issue they care about. And if we've got some extra money, we should help them with that issue. I think he's a better guy than that. I don't think he's ruling it out. I know he's being tough right now, and I know it was his #1 priority to increase healthcare costs on Minnesotans. Why? I've got my theories if you want to hear them, but that's aside. The reality is he increased healthcare costs on Minnesotans. It was wrong. It's bad public policy. And it's directly contradictory to what he campaigned on. Now we've got an opportunity to fix that wrong, and I'm going to challenge him to do what's right, and I think he'll do it.
He said, do not talk about the provider tax this year, to quote him.
I'm sorry. I'm elected to talk about every issue, and if it's the #1 issue that Minnesotans care about, he should be talking about it too. He shouldn't be ruling out the #1 issue that Minnesotans care about. I don't think that's right, and I don't think he'll do it.
Mr. Majority Leader, do you feel as strongly about it that the healthcare provider tax should be repealed?
Well, every option should be considered and talked about. Last session, the thing that I drew a line on the sand is I was not going to do a gas tax no matter what, and that was something that the governor continued to push. The provider tax was something he really wanted to do, so I doubt either one of those things will be revisited this year. I can tell you I'm not interested in the gas tax either, but what I want to talk about, though, are a couple of things, and have not talked to Leader Daudt about this, but I think he really nailed a couple of the key issues that we actually can do together. One of them is a healthy bonding bill, but I also want to remind you of what Commissioner Franz talked about. He said the reason why we get such low interest rates is because we have moderate debt. And so that's why I always push back when the projects get $2 billion, $3 billion. It's like, I want to be responsible about where we're at. But I want to say that we're open to doing an infrastructure bill. We think that we should be considering that. And then the other one I feel like we have the opportunity to lean in on together is fixing DHS. And whichever path that goes, whether we're going to divide it up, but there is hundreds of millions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse, and they should not ask me for a supplemental budget asking for more money when I want them to fix some of their problems. And so I believe the governor is sincere about cleaning that up as well. The path that I will look to is the fact that we fixed MNLARS. That was a place that we disagreed on for a number of years with the prior governor. Governor Walz and I, we got together and looked at it and actually went a different direction, and we now have that moving in a positive direction. So that's the path that I hope we have for DHS as well.
Comments on DHS, does that mean that you would not support sending $29 million to the tribes unless there is some sort of structural change along with it?
We're going to have a conversation about every part of it, but without any change, without doing anything different, I don't know why I would want to give one penny more to the department. But at the same time, I want to be open. I believe the governor's open as well in this area, and so let's fix it. We have an opportunity, so why not do it?
What's an appropriate number for a bonding bill? I assume $3.5 billion is too large, but is $2?
I didn't hear one from the governor, and you're not going to hear one from me. But part of it is, what are the projects? I mean, we all talk about roads and bridges. We all talk about wastewater infrastructure. We talk about higher ed buildings, all the different buildings. So for me, it's got to be regional or statewide significance. That's what bonding bills are meant to be. Occasionally, another project gets in there for the fact that, frankly, you need a number of votes from both sides of the aisle to pass anything. But that's really first what I'm looking at. But I will also balance that with moderate debt is what gave us our good bond rating.
Splitting up DHS probably would lead to more total cost administratively. Usually that's what happens when you create more departments. What do you have to say for that?
It might initially, but the fact is, we have not, there has not been enough oversight, or it's been too big for any one commissioner, any governor, either side of the aisle has not been able to get to the bottom of it. And now there's just one problem after the other that's been surfacing, which tells me it's systemic. And if we don't figure out how to do something different, it's just going to continue on.
At least 130 million.
What's that?
At least 130 million.
Yeah, she said at least 130 million. I said hundreds and hundreds. I know I'm right on that one, but.
Can we get an earlier doubt on the size of the bonding bill as well?
Sure. I am eager to have those conversations. My door's open. My phone is waiting to ring. And I think I agree with Senator Gazelka 100% on the bonding bill. It is a priority for us, for our members. The projects are important. We want to do a reasonable sized bonding bill. I agree about, the reason we have such a low or a good bond rating is we have a moderate to low overall debt, and that helps us look fiscally responsible. So, we don't want to make mistakes that are going to screw that stuff up. I was really proud as Speaker, the bonding bills that we passed during my tenure had the highest percentage of infrastructure projects, road and bridge infrastructure, water infrastructure, than any time in history. We want to prioritize those projects which are regionally important, that have that infrastructure value. HEAPR is also something that's important. We need to invest in the buildings that we own and make sure that we're keeping them up and not fall behind on those things. So I would much rather see a nice-sized bonding bill. You're going to ask me what nice-sized is, I know. But I'd rather see a nice-sized bonding bill that is really, and I would do that bonding bill a little bigger as long as it was really focused on the projects that were important. And my bigger is going to be different than the governor's bigger, by the way. But it's not going to start with 2, I can assure you of that. The challenge, and you know this, but the challenge on a bonding bill is it can't be too small or you can't get votes for it. It can't be too big, you can't get votes for it. But it also can't have the wrong projects in it or you can't get votes for it. So this is an opportunity where really the Constitution forces us to work together, and I'm eager for that. I think that you get the best products when everybody in St. Paul works together, and I think we've got an opportunity to do this one right. So I'm hopeful.
2 billion is too high?
I would say it is, yeah.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.